Good evening, everyone. How are you, ladies? Great. All these beautiful faces here tonight. So lovely to have you here tonight. In case you're wondering who I am, Jeannie gave you a brief introduction. Let me tell you a little bit more about me. Little short story. I'm from a place called Little Rock, Arkansas, okay? Most of you in this room have probably never heard of it. As a matter of fact, when I tell most people where I'm from, they go, oh, yeah, I've been there on my way to somewhere else. That's how small this city is. But believe it or not, 62 years ago, okay, this small little city down south changed our lives and changed American history. On September 25th, 1957, under our National Troop Escort, what they call the Little Rock Nine today. Have anyone in the room ever heard of the Little Rock Nine? There was a movie, the Ernest Green story. Okay, this is a story about 9 African-American brave teenagers, okay? They were escorted into Central High School from the National Guard, okay? Very brave teenagers, all right? They were the first 9 African-American students to integrate the school system in the United States. Years later in the 80s, okay? Years later, I'm not that old, okay? In the 80s, I grew up right down the street from this historic school. And then, and also today, back then and also today, Little Rock still suffers from a hotbed of racism and high crime, okay? Now, this amazing gentleman that I'm about to bring to the stage, that I'm about to introduce, also grew up in Little Rock, Arkansas. As a matter of fact, he graduated from that very same school. For him to come from that type of environment, from a juvenile delinquent, to receive a degree with a double major from the esteemed University of Arkansas, to work for Xerox and CBS Broadcasting makes him a speaker uniquely qualified. Ladies and gentlemen, what I want you to do, I want you to get ready to put your hands together, okay? It is my pleasure to introduce, you can go ahead and start clapping right now, to introduce one of the most creative, the most well-versed, and the only innovator in the field to save our children from police shootings. Please welcome to the stage my brother, Mr. Greg Winston. Bring him on down.
Thank you. I appreciate that intro. I'm getting a little feedback already, I can tell. I'm happy to chat with all of you. I want to thank the ladies who came on before. I don't know if you've ever heard this. Gosh, you're so articulate. You ever hear that from white people? You go, what do you mean by that? I just want to tell you, I've heard that one and it hurts. I want to get into the welcome. As we move forward, I want to turn it down a little bit. I don't know how that happened. Hold on 1 second before we... Oh, now it's back. Okay. Yeah, I don't think this would be any fun if we didn't have some technical difficulties. Welcome again. And I just want to tell you that I'm really excited, not so much because of the speech I'm about to give, but I hope I say something that resonates with you that you can share with someone. If I can do that, then this, to me, is a job well done. The song you hear behind you is written and produced by Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis. It was a few years ago, and the song's called Black Butterfly. And I believe it really talks about how our kids can come from that infancy stage to reach new heights. And I was excited to talk with you, but that song just stood out to me. So welcome, and I want to use that cut to do it. I'm going to give you 3 different levels of this presentation. I'm going to talk about why I would even write a book, why I would come and talk to you. Then I'm going to bridge that with talking a little bit about the world. There's some things I know you know. There'll be some things that you haven't heard. Then I'm going to end it by talking about what to do. And what to do comes from my own experience of talking to over 127 police officers. So what I'm trying to say to you is that it's not guesswork. I actually asked them what they thought, and I'm trying to prepare us at an education level that causes us not to be nervous when we're pulled over. If we know what to do, I'm thinking it'll change that. So let's get it started with the why. I have a young lady that's with me today, and she is my why. From the age of 3, I raised my daughter. And as Crystal knows, we're thick as thieves, and that's me and her at the very beginning. I'm going to show you some pictures she won't want me to show you. So that's us at the very beginning, taken in Dana Point where we used to live. It went from that to this, to her traveling with me, to her 16th birthday. The whole time I've been with her, she's been with me. Our conversations have improved. I have to work on that daily because it's different talking to a young boy than it is to a girl. And I think I figured it out. You have to listen more when there's a girl. I think I figured that part out. I'm not sure, but I think that's what it is. That was the first part of my why. But there's another part of my why that I want to share with you. It comes from these 3 areas. And I got these 3 areas from one person. He spoke mainly about family, work, and church. You see, what Franklin didn't tell you is that before I got to Little Rock, I lived in a place called Gary, Indiana. And it was a crime-ridden environment. It was a blue-collar town. Most of the people worked for the steel mill there. It was located near a place called Chicago. Here's what's interesting about Gary. At the same time that I was living there, we led in homicides over Chicago. So let me say it a different way. Gary had a population of just over 1 million. Chicago had a population of 9 million. We kill more people than Chicago. So my mom was fed up with the crime. I was getting involved in it. At the age of 9, I carried a knife, ran numbers. And she sent me to live with my grandfather. That's where I get this part of my why from. He believed in family. He believed in hard work, and he believed in religion. I'm not sure in what order. What's it? Is the mic out? Oh. Okay. Hope this is any better? Okay. That's my grandfather. You're seeing him at a slow time now. Most of the time he was moving fast. The thing that I remember most about my grandfather is how we would talk. I'd ride in that truck with him. I'd ride on a John Deere tractor. I'd go to church with him. And for the first time, I saw someone who was completely self-made. Keep in mind, the people that I met before my grandfather were largely criminals. This is the first time I saw someone who made something on their own. This is a clip that reminds me of my grandfather, and it's a church clip. So I want you to watch this one. See if this rings a bell with you. Here we go. Okay. For some reason the remote stopped. So this is the second thing on the technical end. That clip reminds me of my grandfather because when I grew up and I went to the city, I noticed something different about the churches. When I went to church in the city, the choir sang. In the country church, the church sang. Did you notice that? Everybody in that church was singing. And I missed that when I went to the city. I wrote a book about my grandfather, the first book I've ever written. And here's why I wrote the book. I'd never seen anyone have command of his life, his family, his business, like my grandfather. Keep in mind, it was in Arkansas at the time when black people couldn't buy land. He amassed over 1,000 acres of land. So here's the first meeting with my grandfather. My mom takes me down after a shooting that happened in Gary, Indiana. That was so close I had blood on me. That next morning I woke up, all my bags were packed. My mom takes me to a place called Varner, Arkansas. You talk about Little Rock, nobody knows where Varner is. I go to Varner, Arkansas. As soon as I get there, my mom explains what's going on. There's whispering. I'm standing there watching, seeing what's going on. My grandfather says, all right, son, get in the truck. And we take off, and we drive for a while. And he stops. He says, I want you to get out now and tell me what you see over there. I said, I see horses. He said, yeah, all those horses belong to us. He said, now you may not want horses, but because you're like me, you can have anything you want. Get back in the truck. We got back in the truck and we drove for a while. And he pulls up in front of this body of water. He said, get out, I want to show you something. He said, what do you think that is? I said, oh, well, that's a lake. He said, no, son, that's a field of rice. Rice grows underwater. No one wanted this land. I bought it for pennies on the dollar, and I put that pump in there. Now everybody wants it. He said, you may not want rice, but you can have anything you want because I am an example for you. Get back in the truck. And we drove. Now keep in mind, the whole time we're driving, we're on his land, and I didn't know it. And he pulls up to a pasture, and as far as I could see were cows. He said, how many cows do you think are out there? I said, I don't know, 50. He said, 63. He said, all those cows belong to us. You may not want cows, but whatever you want, you can have. I said, Granddaddy, we're rich. He said, no, I'm rich. You're Greg. Gee, can you hit the next slide? So that's my why, and I wanted to start there because just like I'm talking to you, every one of you has a story that's very similar to that. There's a why that you're concerned about your kids. As we get into this, I hope to answer it for you. See you next slide. Here's the world. One more time. This is an article in the LA Times. This was just last week. And what that article is saying is that 1 out of every 1,000 young black men have the chance of being shot by the police. It was amazing to me to read that. The young lady who wrote the article, I reached out to and asked her to come to the event. Didn't hear anything, but I wanted to see if by profiting from my misfortune, she would come out and support. Next one, Gia. This is another article. This was last week also. This was in Omaha. It's the same stuff. Predicting death with no answers. Next one, please. Here's something that I thought would be of interest. I want to talk about police officers. This was a slide that shows the 10 worst. Here's what you may not know. No, every day police officers are arrested. They average 2 to 3 police officers that are arrested for committing crimes. Most of the crimes are arrested on the job. 94% of them are male. These are the people who are sworn to serve and protect. Next slide. I got this. Crystal, does this look familiar? Yeah. I got this slide from Crystal off Facebook. And the reason I put it up here is that so often we are confused as being the worst criminals in the world. But just look at the stats. The one that gets me the most is when I hear people say black on black crime. And there's far more white people killing other white people than black. Here's what I'm talking about. An image that's being portrayed. It's just an image that they are portraying of us. That's incorrect. How many of you remember the killing of Eric Garner? You remember how long it took them to reach that decision? How long? It's 5 years. Okay? Here's what you may not know. The guy who killed Eric Garner was a guy by the name of Panatello. I did the research on him. Do you know what his criminal record is? He has 14 offenses while a police officer. 12 of those were violent acts. You know why I bring that up? That every time I look at police officers, we tend to think it's one officer. It's an institution of racism because they permit it to go on when they know that person's unfit. There's so many officers that have multiple infractions, just like Penatello, and no one pays attention to it. That in itself would reduce the killing. But let's go on. There's more. I want to get to the part of what to do. Next one, please. I got to play this clip for you. A little volume, Gia. Next slide, please. I wanted to share something with you on that slide, on that clip. What I noticed in that, and I don't know if anyone caught it, did you see the segregation within that? And I thought it's really interesting that everyone would want to, and this is in the 60s, that someone would want to hear Ray Charles, but they couldn't get in their head that Ray's black, and maybe all of us should enjoy the music. They wanted to separate. And the police officers went nuts because white kids were dancing with black kids. Here's why that's important. During that time, the talk was different. The talk we received was different. And here's what I want to tell you about that talk. That when I look at the talk then and I look at the talk now, we've relaxed ourselves. We think that because we can dance and we can party, everything's okay. It's not okay. What's killing us right now is the fact that we believe that times have changed and we're equal. Not in their mind. Until we get to the point where we really understand that part, crimes will continue against us. That's the reason for the talk. That's the reason I wrote the book. I don't want to give you the insight of the book. Next slide, please. Before I go on, I need to put this, can you hold this for a second? I need to take my jacket off. I don't know if anybody else, but I'm about medium rare already. Man. Okay. Someone told me to bring a handkerchief. Okay. I want to talk about prevention. Because every time I hear about someone being shot, probably 80% of the cases had a prevention element. There's some where we had no chance. But there are a few that have potential. Can you hit P, Gia? Hit P and it'll go back. Yeah. I want to go on page 19, I talk about prevention. So here's what I got from police officers, and I want to share this with you. The first thing that causes us to be pulled over by police are the things that they see. If your car has anything going on with the license plate, whether the tabs are off, or the license plate is skewed, or the numbers are blocked, you're getting pulled over. The next thing I saw that they talked about was damage. They look for damage on windows, thinking you broke into it. They look for damage on a bumper, thinking you hit it as you stole it. Damage causes you to be pulled over. Gia, my daughter that I was telling you about, was pulled over about a month ago. Why? Because her license plate still had the new car tag on it. But here's what this book did for her. It gave her an awareness. She saw the cop coming toward her. She saw him make a U-turn and follow her. She didn't get freaked out. She made a right-hand turn. He made a right-hand turn. He hit the signal. She pulled over. Her attitude, her placement of the hands, her having the information ready, and her upbeat persona caused her to get a warning, not a ticket. It's the thing that made me write the book, because I was afraid that one day I'd get a phone call. And these ladies didn't say it, but I heard it in their voice. You know how I know the timbre of the voice? Because I heard the voice when they had the shooting in Colorado. I heard that same voice when they shot in Florida. But here's what mystifies me. Why do our voices not cause them to have town meetings? Why don't our cries cause them to enact new laws? So what I'm saying to you is, we're going to have to take it upon ourselves. That's the reason I applaud these ladies. And there's an additional step. The step I'm talking about is prevention. Next slide, please. When you're pulled over, I want to create enough good habits that you automatically know what to do so that there's not a problem. Each of you has about 50,000 thoughts every day. That means as I'm talking to you right now, every minute I'm talking, you'll have 30 minutes of thinking about something that has nothing to do with me. I'm up here trying to throw down, and you go, is that brother wearing pink socks? Is that what I saw? And then you'll come back to something I'm thinking about, or I'm talking about. As I'm talking, as I'm really getting into it, you say, well, he's taller than the last speaker. I don't know what's going on with that. And then you'll come back. So here's what keeps us going. Most people operate on habit. By writing the book and allowing you to understand how they think, you can create habits that will get you out of a jam, and you don't even have to think about it. So you kind of follow that? I'm telling you right now, you can get in your car right now. If you live near here, you can drive home. You won't even remember how to go. You'll just, oh, I'm at home. Sometimes you're going to the store. You get into the car and you go, oh, I'm here. I'm trying to create habits so when that pause occurs, you automatically know what to do. Next slide, please. The next thing that helps is position. On page 25, I started talking about that. I didn't realize it, but cops look at position to determine what they're going to do. And all of this happens in a matter of seconds. There's a movie that came out called The Hate You Love? Hate You Give. I don't know if you remember that, but that father taught them kids military style. And when that young girl was in a car with the guy who pulled over, she put her hands on the dashboard. She automatically knew what to do, and she knew that he didn't know what to do, and she was trying to instruct him. But it was too late. When you have that position, it's 10 and 2. I'll tell you something I didn't know. Police officers look at positioning more often than not. If your papers are lower, you stand a larger, you stand a chance of getting shot more quickly. So you know what I do? I put mine in the visor. Not only will I ask permission, but I'll tell them it's up there. Because up signals relaxation. Down means something that could go wrong. Did you know they tap your bumper, the side of your car, as they walk up? I ask them, well, why do you do that? The number one reason is they want to have a fingerprint to show that they were there. That's old school. The number two reason is they want to train themselves to be on the side of the car in case you back up quickly. All of this is in the head of police officers. When I interviewed them, I found things that were surprising. When you position properly, it allows you to relax them so you can go home. Keep in mind, they're habitual also. When police officers pull you over, they go into habit. And if they perceive something good is going on, all of a sudden, you have a chance of leaving. Next slide, please. I want you to watch tone when you ask for permission. I don't know if you've ever been at a dinner party. At the end of the dinner party, someone will say, would you care for coffee? That's about the tone you need to have with them. Because anytime you have a rough tone, it riles them up. They think they're entitled. And what's interesting is it's done by age. When I interviewed police officers in the South, the older guys had more of an attitude. The younger ones were nicer. Here in California, the younger ones have an attitude. The more mellow they get, the older they get, the more mellow they are. It was the opposite. What I'm trying to get to is we can control that 7 seconds I've been talking about. It seems odd, but most police officers have seen someone that kind of looks like you. Maybe in a movie, maybe some comedy show. If you remind them of that person and it's up-tempo, you stand a chance of changing how they look at you in that first 7 seconds. But that is your best chance. Here's why. If something happens to you and you sue the city, you can get $6 million on average. But I don't know that I'd accept $6 million for the pain and heartache. Most parents wouldn't. Maybe we'd accept it for some other people's kids, but not ours. So here's what I want to tell you. That tone can save your life. Next slide, please. I want to go to some discoveries as I wrap this up. Did you know that in my conversations with police officers, most of them will openly admit that they can't shoot? When you see the number of shots that are fired at people of color, one of the reasons is they can't shoot. And they keep pulling the trigger. The next thing I found out that I thought was really interesting is that that back panel that I told you about is more dominant than most anything they do. It's the first thing they do. After they touch that panel, if they have a concern, they'll put their hand on the hip, and I'm asking you to observe that. You don't have to move, just watch them in the rearview mirror. You'll watch them tap that bumper or that back panel. The next thing is who they say they avoid. This might shock you. Do you know the number one person police officers try to avoid? Not thugs or hoodlums. Middle-aged white women, blonde, that live in the suburbs. You know why they're afraid of them? They're going to yell at them, they'll spit on them, they'll slap them, and they're afraid to do anything with them because they know they're connected. It shocked me when they said that. Middle-aged white women in the suburb, blonde, blue-eyed. They were very specific. Then I want to tell you about something that I discovered that really bothered me. I'm sure you've seen the list of cases that have gone to trial. And since 2013, there have been over 1,000 of them, only 13 convictions. And we keep looking at the evidence thinking that's the reason. That's not it. There's a rule called qualified immunity that was written to protect politicians and officers, and they put police in that mix now. If you ever saw the Mel Gibson movie with Danny Glover, what was that movie? They did a series of them. It was Lethal Weapon. Do you remember in that movie where there was this German tyrant, and he kept saying, I have diplomatic immunity. Okay, you remember that? That's what police officers have. They have immunity. And that's the reason in most cases they get off scot-free, and we're looking at the evidence saying they should have convicted, and we're all upset. And judges cite that and let them off. So the fight is toward that. The last thing I want to talk to you about is, remember when I was talking about the farm and my grandfather? I didn't tell you this, but in the neighboring farms, they were probably a mile, 2 miles away. I could get on a horse and go to a neighboring farm, and I was reprimanded the same way I'd be at home. I was protected the same way I'd be at home. And if I got out of hand, I'd be punished the same way I'd be at home. There was more community. And I'm suggesting that we do the same. These groups that we're talking about, this talk, all of us need to come together. The reason I put an email up here is that I'm trying to make sure that as I write, as I give instruction, that I'm able to get it to you. Because I have to tell you, I study it every single day. Next slide, please. This is how to help. I'll get the book and teach from the book. I think you heard earlier that I speak to corporations. And a lot of those cases, I'm training people. And along with that training, there will be a notebook. And you know what I found, and it's true of my stuff, and it's true of most of the people who do what I do, that people take the notebook and they take note, and they take it home and they file it, and they never look at it again. So the first 2 weeks, they're going through your information, and then they forget it. The reason I'm saying get the book and teach from it is that you'll help someone. Then tell somebody that you know about the book. It's the only book I'm aware of that comes from the mouths of police officers. If there's another one, I haven't heard about it. And let's join, let's become a community. Let's go old school. Try and come up with things and share and talk so that we can have a stronger community. If you know about a company I should talk to, let me know about that. I believe there are companies who would buy the book for their employees. I also think that there'll be other groups that you know about that I should come and talk to. Next slide, G. I put this this cut up here. You can turn down a little bit. I have a nephew in Sacramento. And I remember when hip-hop was first taking over. And I was old school thinking I love the ballads and the love songs. And he explained to me that most rap artists are actually poets. And so I started to listen. And I like this cut because he's talking about he's not tired. And I'm just starting this, and I'm telling him I'm going to grind harder because I'm not tired. Next slide, please. This will bring it home to you. In the South, there's a mass choir that's known as the Mississippi Mass Choir. And turn it up a little bit, Gia. This song was so popular in the South, I forgot of it. And one night I'm watching ESPN, and the guy who's the announcer on ESPN was playing this song. White guy just jamming. I couldn't believe it. And what he was talking about was sports, and he's not tired yet. So, next slide, please. Oh, go. I'm sorry. Turn it down. Yeah. I want to. You can turn it all the way. Thank you. I just want to tell you that tonight, in spite of the technical difficulties, I'm glad that I could speak to at least one person, much less 10 or 12, or how many are here. And I appreciate your time and attention. The one thing I'll say about the group, those splintered, is most speakers judge the crowd by one thing, and that's how often they are looking at you. See, sometimes when I'm speaking, I realize something, that people don't think I can see them. It's like I'm talking and they think they can only see me, like they're at home watching television. I just want to tell you I can see you. So here's what I want to end with. I appreciate your time and attention. I hope I said something that helps. And if there's anything I can do, please let me know. Thank you for your time.